got all the rich information which brings it to life.
Yeah, it's all the stuff behind the poems.
So what I think we should do is we're going to all have a copy of this to take away with us tonight.
Okay.
We're going to listen through it and try and come up with some images that would represent even maybe one of these. Like you say, it's a sonnet, so it's very condensed.
Sure.
It's only made up of 14 lines, but within those 14 lines, you know, we can recreate and elaborate some of the
because it's not just
words.
about. Well, I mean, are you recording this now? Do you want to?
Yeah.
It's not just about. Well, perhaps I should start off by saying how I started it, right? Because my idea was to write a series of sonnets, 49 poems, about my family's emigration from Ireland in the 1840s after the hunger, you know, the famine, the Great Famine. A lot of people came over to South Wales, and they were basically the poorest of the poor. They couldn't afford, you know, passage to Liverpool or certainly to America, so they just came over. And they were sort of dumped outside the town and made their way into the town. And then they sort of gathered together in a small ghetto, which was how Pil Gwentley started, a sort of area around the docks. So what I wanted to do with the poems was to sort of explore that part of my family's history. But then into that came lots of other things that you noticed when I was reading. So not only the family history, but also like what they left behind, the Irish heritage, the sort of mythic heritage of Ireland. I mean, in that poem number 3 about Maggie O'Neill, who's my great-grandmother, I was thinking of, you know, all the way through time, people migrated westwards, you know, in Britain. They always went west and then into Wales and into Ireland. And then they turn around and they come back, that generation. They came east and they left Ireland behind, and they left all the sort of the bad stuff, but also the good stuff, you know, the family and the whole Irish inheritance was sort of left behind. And I wondered how they felt about that. And of course, with each generation, it becomes less and less, you know, becomes more and more watered down in a sense.
Yeah, because it's there's such strong traditions. The Irish have strong traditions, strong beliefs, and their lifestyle is very different to here.
Well,
almost,
it certainly was
isn't it?
then.
Yeah.
You also had the religious aspect, of course, because they were Catholic and they were considered to be, you know, I don't know if you read the newspapers of the time, but the prejudice against the Irish coming into Newport was immense, because they were seen as outsiders, you know, different religion, danger. You know, there's lots of parallels with today, lots. So as I sort of got into the sonnets, these things sort of began to crop up, and then I came across this image in number 5 about the tides, which I feel is like really the heart of the sequence, really, because we live on the estuary. The estuary is, hugely powerful, and twice a day you get this huge tide which comes in, second biggest tide in the world actually. Fresh water and salt water, and where do they join? Where do they mingle? There is no line you can draw. There is no place you can say that's fresh, that's salt. There's a place where they all come together, you know, and then they withdraw from each other and they come together, and it happens every day. And that seemed to me a really good metaphor for immigration. So when do you become part of the country you've gone to? Is it this generation? Is it the next one? Or is it the one after that? And you know, how long does it take before you consider yourself Welsh or British? Or it was just interesting, and the way that the children are always the ones who lose the identity because they lose the language. First of all, my great-grandparents were obviously Irish-speaking, so that went straight away. And then they lose the accent because the children are brought up with this accent. And, you know, how long does it take to dilute? Because it is dilution, and that's what the water image is as well, dilution. So that's what number 5 was, and I feel number 5 is really the heart of the whole sequence in many ways. And then I began to get a bit more personal and write about myself. Like I say, I was brought up in Pil. We lived over a shop, my grandfather's shop, which was a paint and wallpaper shop. And we lived in the attic, and he lived on the first floor, and then the shop was underneath. And as a kid, we used to live there, so I used to be in the shop a lot and watch the way the streets around sort of decayed, because Pil, like most of Newport, was very big and booming in the 19th century, and then gradually began to decay away and become, you know, less and less prosperous and change. And it was interesting to see that happen. Even as a child, you could see that happening. You could see it starting to happen. And of course, the adults all groused about it and said things are not like they used to be. And you could see it happen.
It's ironic that it's exactly the same reflection on what's happening in the centre of Newport now.
Mm.
You know, more and more shops are boarded up.
Sure.
Shops are migrating
Yeah.
outside the
Outside the
nucleus of
town.
the city.
Yeah. And that, that's bad because the town is...
Yeah, it takes the hub of the life away.
It takes the life out of the place, sure. And then I started to write about the poetry, because obviously when I was young, that was when I started writing poetry. And in like number 9, which is the one about the mythology really, it's all about, when do you start becoming a poet? At what age do you start thinking the way a poet thinks and lining words up and working on them? And in a sense that ties in with the river metaphor, because when I began to write number 9, when do the poets begin their voyages, when is that coracle lowered into the river, I started to tap into the Taliesin story. And I don't know if you know it.
Do you know it?
T-A-L
T-A-L
I-E-S-I-N.
I-N. Right.
I-N.
Taliesin
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
Is it a tale or a story?
It's a legend.
Legend, right.
Yeah. And basically, Taliesin, oh gosh, I could tell you the story, but it's a great story.
Is it?
It's a really good story.
I'm here.
Shall I tell it to you then?
Yeah.
Okay, once it's based in North Wales. You're on.
Yeah.
You should have got Daniel to tell you this. You'd do a great job of it.
No, we've had Daniel. We want you now.
Okay. So
We
far
love you, Daniel.
up in North Wales, in Lake Bala, there is a witch called Ceridwen. Right, she lives on a castle in the middle of the lake. This is the short version, obviously. Ceridwen has a son who is very ugly. Okay, tremendously ugly, and she worries that no one will want to marry him. So she decides to brew a cauldron of inspiration and poetry. And into the cauldron she puts all these magic ingredients, okay? And then the cauldron has to be stirred for a year and a day without stopping. So she gets a little boy from the kitchens, a boy called Gwion, little Gwion, and she gives him a spoon and she says, you must stir the cauldron for a year and a day without stopping. So he does, okay? When I tell this to kids, I say, he stirred on his knees and he stirred on his back and then he stirred... But we won't go into all that.
Oh, yeah. The kids are.
So he stirs the cauldron, and Ceridwen, on the very last day when the cauldron should be ready, Ceridwen sits down next to the cauldron because she knows that of all the liquid in the cauldron, there are only 3 magic drops. And whoever tastes the magic drops will become a poet and a magician and a shapeshifter. Okay, so this is the magic she wants for her son. But she falls asleep, and Gwion, as he's stirring, the liquid in the cauldron gives a great bloop, and out of it come 3 magic drops which land on his hand and burn his skin. So he puts them into his mouth like that, and he sucks them. And as soon as he tastes them, he becomes different. He becomes someone who knows the past and the future. He becomes a poet, he becomes a shapeshifter. And he knows that when she wakes up, she will want to kill him because he's stolen the magic. So he leaps up from his chair and he runs out of the castle across the lake, and he starts to run. She wakes up, she sees what's happened, she chases him, and he turns himself into a greyhound. No, sorry, that's wrong. He turns himself into a hare. She turns herself into a greyhound and pursues him. And then when she's almost caught him, he comes to a river and throws himself in and becomes a fish. And she throws herself in and becomes an otter. And just as she's almost caught him, he comes out of the water and becomes a bird. And she comes out of the water and becomes an eagle. Okay?
I'm sure I'm one better.
And then, just as she's almost caught him, he's flying over. He's running out of ideas now. He's flying over a farmyard. The farmer has been threshing the wheat, and the farmyard is covered with thousands of tiny grains of wheat. So he gets down into the farmyard and becomes a grain of wheat. And Ceridwen lands on the fence and looks at all these grains of wheat. She doesn't know which one is him. So she turns herself into a hen, and she eats every single one of them till there's none left. And then she thinks, well, I've had my revenge. So she goes home to the castle. But her womb begins to swell. And 9 months later, she gives birth to a baby boy. She knows this is Gwion, still Gwion, reincarnated. And she decides that she will kill him. But as soon as she sees his face, it's so beautiful that she cannot kill the baby. So she puts the baby into a bag made of crane skin and she throws him into the river, thinking, that's how I'll get rid of him. But of course the bag does not sink, it bobs on the water and it goes down the river and it snags in a weir on the estuary of the river.
Like Moses.
You've heard this story. And that's where a prince called Elphin comes every year at May Eve to empty the weir of the fish. And that year there are no fish in the river. All there is this bag. So he wades out and he opens the bag, and there in the bag is this baby who looks up at him with this beautiful shining forehead. And Elphin says, well, I'll take the baby home. And the baby says to him, you'd better take me home because I am no ordinary baby and I can do all sorts of things for you. And Elphin is astonished by this magical child and he gives him the name Taliesin, which means shining forehead. And that's how the story starts. I won't tell you the rest, but Taliesin grows on to become Wales's greatest poet ever. So you can see where the elements of that come in, the weir,
So
the
many
river,
visuals, aren't there?
and the shape-shifting. Yeah, if you want an animation, there it is, isn't it? Because it's a classic Welsh myth. It's got all the sort of river imagery in it that you could use. And it's also got the idea of the poet.
It has. It is. It's very beautiful. And also, it's, it teaches...
Yeah. If you want to find it, shall I write it down where you'll find it?
Okay.
There are various versions, obviously. Oops.
Did you say it was number 9 then that story was based
That one
on?
is, number 9. There's a book called the Mabinogion, right? Which is a sort of collection of Welsh folk tales, folk myths and legends.
That's not the one you bought, is it?
No, it's not
No.
the one I bought. And it was
gonna order
translated by a woman called Lady Charlotte Guest in the 19th century. And I think it's in Everyman paperbacks, you can get a copy of it. And the Tale of Taliesin is in that.
So,
But if you Google it, I'm sure you'll get
so
it.
is it based? Where does it start then? I mean, it's a river metaphor. So in theory, we could film around here, couldn't we?
Yeah,
If
why
we were
not?
going to-
It's not actually set on this river, but obviously I took it and did what I wanted with it, and you do the same, But it just struck me as when does the poet start being the poet? When you're a baby, when you taste the magic drops of the cauldron, when you shape shift into different things as you sort of go through your life, you become
Morph,
different sort of
yeah.
people. When do you actually start? I don't know. And it's like the tides in a sense, you can't actually spot the line, the dividing line. So I was just playing with that idea really in that one.
So when did you decide that?
When I was about 11.
About 11.
Yeah,
And you put pen to paper and
Yeah.
started.
that was it really.
Can you remember your first poem?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It was a
What-
poem about fish actually. Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
Did you document it?
I've got it somewhere, but
It's interesting. What do you remember? What made you?
I just wrote it in school. It was one of those tasks you had to do in school.
Oh right, yeah.
You were
yeah.
given it to do, and as I wrote it, to me now looking back on it, it seems as though I thought, wow, I can do this. I don't know whether I did or whether that's retrospect, but I certainly knew that I could do it more than the other kids in the class could do it. And that's not saying I was any more intelligent, but it was just
You had a talent.
it was a skill, yeah,
Mm.
a natural sort of instinct for it. And then I just realised then that I did.
Mm.
Do you like marine life?
Not particularly.
I just wondered why you
but
chose
it's just
fish.
that was the subject that we were given.
Yeah.
And I just knew that I could do it. So after that, I did write a lot of poetry.
So you've lived in Newport virtually
Always.
all your life.
Yeah.
Okay then.
Mm.
And have you seen? From the area you're from, I'm not focusing particularly on there, but it does seem to sort of congregate a lot of people that are from, multicultural.
It's always been a multicultural area. When I was in school,
It's Pill. We were talking
it's
about
Pill,
Pill
yeah.
now, yeah.
I mean, when I was in school in Pill, in my junior school, the class they were all different nationalities, but different ones than you have now. So obviously the main group were Irish. There were lots of Italians, lots of Poles, Czech. Not many Asian people. Well, obviously it was a Catholic school, so there was a sort of religious thing there. But over the years, I've seen lots of different, types of people coming to Pill.
And did the school, did it ever sort of point out or was there any sort of description about, you know, that they've come from, or the introduction, or was it just
No,
no?
because we're talking, you know, a while back.
Yeah.
And things are done differently now. In those days, there were 4 or 5 primary schools in Pill. Now there are only 2. St Michael's, which is still there, which is still a Catholic school, and Pill School, which tends to take most of the immigrants, to be honest, because, you know, it's a state school, and it takes all religions, whereas the other one is a Catholic school. So,
Yeah.
although Catholicism is a worldwide religion anyway,
Because the thing is, there's still quite a big debate about integration and the lack of, you know, the facilities to enable people, you know, out of the EU to integrate into society. And I was just wondering, in retrospect, how that would have equated to when you were, you know, a young child, because I was most probably in the same environment as you, you know, Catholic, all the rest of it, and we had a lot of Italians,
yeah.
but we didn't have people that were from exotic, far off places.
Well, no, neither did we. Not when I was a child, no. But I think as a child you take it for granted. You know, you take things for granted that the girl who sits next to you is from Italy. You just take it for granted. You don't think about it.
Question it, do
You
you?
don't question it. It's just, and you're not that self-aware. But things are different now. Obviously, people are coming from very different cultures, and so perhaps there is more of a, you know, of a difference. But Pale is certainly a sort of melting pot of cultures.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's interesting. It's an interesting place to live. And the languages that always interest me. You hear many different languages on the street all the time, and I always have, and that's,
Yeah.
you know, that's great.
Cara and I attended the National Women's Day celebration on Sunday. It was in King's Church. It was a collection of people with different stalls, you know.
Yeah,
from
I heard about that. Someone else was telling me about that.
Yeah, it was actually quite well attended,
it was,
wasn't it? And it was so beautiful because some of the young girls, there was a Gurkha, there was some from
Wow.
Bangladesh, you know, doing their traditional dancing and things like that, and representing what they felt was part of, you know, the colour of their country.
Sure.
And so originally we had this idea of trying to, you know, marry up this metaphor of the river, you know, the flow of people, the integration, you know, we're talking about the salt water and the fresh water. But it's getting into our heads a decent animation that will reflect what we're trying to say without being too complicated.
Yeah.
And this is why the lecturer yesterday, our documentary lecturer, said, well, focus maybe more on the life of Catherine and her voyage with her ancestors, and you know, and as opposed to bringing, because we've got lots of, I had this idea originally of using young people, because, you know, through the eyes of a young person, you know, the fresh, there's this sort of unadulterated, you know, they haven't got the preconceived ideas that adults have got, and yet they're embarking on the journey because the parents, whoever it is, the adults are dragging them through, irrespective of whether they want to go or not.
Yeah.
But then I thought, is it too complicated to, you know, involve some of the young, just, you know, one young person and get some very simple animation, you know, being taken through a journey, and then, you know, sort of paralleling it a little bit with.
I mean, you know, I don't mind you basing it on me as long as I don't have to sort of
Be in
be in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to like, animate a figure of me or a figure.
What I was told to do from my tutor is, he said just make the poem do it.
Yeah.
Because the idea was that she
Yeah.
finds the poems to be stronger than the people.
Yeah.
Then that's because she is.
I mean, they're quite
an
visual.
artist in some respect.
Yeah. They are quite visual. There are lots of visual images in there because I like that.
Mm.
So I mean, maybe you could sort of do the poet type thing, the sort of the journey of the poet, and mix that in with a more realistic social aspect of it.
Again, you see, it's you can only do 2-minute animation max. It's a minimum of a 7 to 10 minute film. So that's up to Cara and I then to
create the live action element of the film.
to create the live
So
action.
I've got a sort of idea of how I do your poems. They would be mostly all hand drawn onto paper,
Yeah.
scanned in, and they would add chalk as colours instead of actually use digital colours.
Yeah.
It'd all be done non-digitally. Or
Yeah. That sounds good.
physically.
Actually, I can see that.
Very
Yeah.
sketchy looking.
Yeah.
If you want, and sort of.
That's what I was thinking. That was sort of in my mind. Yeah.
Do you mind if I pick a time period to try and keep it sort of
No.
old working class?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, like I say, the 1840s was the time that the people came over.
I wasn't far off when I guessed, and I was
Yeah.
guessing 1900s and just between 1900 and
Yeah.
1910, so I wasn't far off.
No, it was.
Just
yeah,
before
it
that.
was before that. Yeah.
So you'd rather it be based in the past than today?
I don't mind. You know, it's up to you. Basically, I'm just giving you this recording
Yeah.
for you
The
to
thing is,
do
though, if
what
it's
you
about
want.
Catherine now,
I'm not going to be available, see, to do anything else with you.
no, I'm
'cause
just
I've
thinking. But I
got
mean, if
so
we
much
reflect on, I think if we do in the 1900s, it's almost like a little bit of archive,
Yeah.
and I really wanted it more current. You know,
Right.
to
I see. Yeah.
current. That's a good one, isn't it? The river.
There you go.
But you like the oldest, don't
I do
you?
like the oldest.
We have to deal with that.
But then
Okay.
can't you do both? Can't you sort of go from one to the other? Or I don't know.
Could be a representation of how it hasn't changed the difficulties of becoming a part of modern society. It was just as hard for them as it is for people
This is
now.
what I like the idea of.
And
to
the
be
poem
honest.
is just the visual and poetic representation of the past, and we're doing a very real now and a very fanciful past. That's all.
Because the thing is, it could, without going too heavy, but this could be shown at festivals, and it would be nice to have a little message, just some sort of social message to say that, times are tough now. They've been tough in the past, and what was actually changed.
Yeah.
It's so they're facing the same challenges that they were 200 years ago. 100.
So you'd need more vocal stuff then, wouldn't you? I mean, just me reading is not enough. You're going to need other people speaking. And
This is what we're thinking.
would you have
yeah.
a commentary of some sort as well? Or not?
Well, we've started some interviews with, but it's just getting that fresh element of marrying it together, incorporating it, so that it is a story.
Why
not
don't you
just-
go to the schools? Why don't you go to Pill School?
We've got some young people, which
Yeah.
Pill School, that's a good one.
Because they've got lots of different nationalities, and I'm sure they'd be interested in you going in and talking. Well, I mean, I don't know. I presume
The thing
they
is,
would
though,
be
that there's lots of complication with parental consent
yeah.
and all that sort of thing. But we have got a young 11-year-old girl whose parents, she's from a Gurkha sort of military sector, and the Gurkhas, when they come here, are treated really, really badly. They're struggling. So that, I think that perspective might be quite refreshing from a young girl's perspective.
Yeah.
And we could use Catherine as, she's got the bloodline, the history, the ancestry. It's a true pull. Would you use a feminine, or would it be asexual, or what would the?
It can be a mix of both genders if you want. There can be some scenes where there are women and men walking across the shore of the river, and there could be other scenes where it's just men or just women. It depends on what I'm thinking when I'm listening to the audio, and then it comes down to how I'm going to draw it out, how I'm going to storyboard it. It's just a mix, really.
So really, you need to sort of go away, listen to these, and
So I was
Get
gonna-
some,
your ideas down, isn't
the
it?
problem is, if I was going to go asexual, then we're going for a figure that's not human, really.
Yeah,
He would
I
look-
prefer to have a bit of a persona.
Yeah.
It'd look a bit like what I did in my last film, where it was a strange thing. That
Yeah.
every time I drew it, it just kept changing its gender fluidity. And
Yeah.
even though they liked that idea, if we're doing something real, it would be a bit strange for your animation to keep going shapeless.
Yeah.
This blobby thing.
You see, we could start it off from the poem that we're the child sitting in the classroom, in the 60s and that sort of thing. That'd be some lovely imagery there, wouldn't there? Some interesting, sat at a desk with different types of people around her, and then meeting various people from different nationalities, watching around her what's going on, the places being boarded up and this, and integration, and bringing it to the present day with some of the children's stories. We could do that sort of thing. Or we could go way back, to the 19th century.
My question,
and then it would be more of a voyage.
my question for you is, if I do go back to the bit where they are coming and they're integrated, and do you mind whether it's dark or whether it's happy or whether it's in between? Or do
I
you
don't mind at all. I mean, it's it's your project.
Okay.
They had a pretty rough time, I know that. You know, I mean, if you read the sort of the early histories of Newport, Pill was, first of all, it wasn't part of Newport at all because Commercial Road wasn't developed, so it was a completely separate village with marshland in between. You know, and we're only talking about 200 years ago, really. I mean, it's amazing how much the place has changed. And it was very much a ghetto, you know, down there. And then Newport was quite a prosperous little town. But obviously, after the coal boom, everything just boomed. You know, I mean, the docks were being built, and
Then they modernised all of
yeah.
the riverfront.
There are a few books called Pilgwentley. There are two books by a guy called Cliff Knight. You'll get them in the library in town. What he did a sort of year by year.
Pilgwentley, did you say?
Pilgwentley. It's just called Pilgwentley Volume 1 and Volume 2. He did sort of year by year. He went through the newspapers and just took out events that happened. And reading those, you see exactly what sort of place, dangerous sort of place it was, you know.
Did the river divide the social classes or not?
I don't think it did, because Newport only existed on this side
That's
of the
what I
river.
was thinking.
There was
So it
nothing
wasn't
on the other
developed, was it?
side, no.
Okay.
But it was a way in. It was the way in to Newport and out. It was,
There was a lot of docks, weren't there? A lot of galleon ships and things like that that actually
yeah,
came into Newport. Of course, because, you know, you got the access of the sea.
yeah.
So,
The only thing that wouldn't have been there would have been some of the bridges besides the transport bridge.
Yeah,
The one by the castle would have been there, and then the other two in between, like the new one and the
Yeah.
one they built in the 80s, they wouldn't have been there.
neither would the Transporter Bridge.
No, that's
That was
relatively modern
1910,
one.
something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. So the only bridge was Newport
Oh, the
Bridge.
castle, yeah.
The castle bridge.
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah,
that's-
if you look through those books, you'll see, because I knew those books, so they sort of behind a lot of, like the second poem about the way the place was. It was really rough, you know.
Yeah.
Seriously rough. People were killed.
So why did you choose to live there then?
Oh, I didn't choose to live there.
Oh, you didn't?
I mean, it was my great grandparents that.
Right, so
actually,
it was the shop
Yeah.
that sort
When you say people were killed, do you mean like racist attacks or?
yeah, it was just a hard drinking environment. The people worked on the docks all day. They got drunk at night. So you know, it was like a frontier town in many ways. And there were fights, there were arguments, there were people lived like 3 or 4 families in a house crammed together. There was sickness, there was illness, there was no education. It was, you know, it must have been hell basically. And that took a long time to work out, you know. And you know, as you say, things these days. I mean, I know of a house in Pill where there's about 30 Czech guys living in the house. You know, I mean, it happens over and over again. Not so badly as it was then, because there was no social provision then in those days. But still, things still go on like that. But Pill is certainly nowhere near like it was. I mean, it's probably got a reputation for being rough. It's not actually rough at all these days in comparison to that. You know, it was.
It's
must have been
ironic,
a terrible
isn't it?
place then.
Because I mean, I'm only from Hereford, but when I first came here, they said be careful.
Did they
You know,
really?
walking through and all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. So I was like, oh, okay.
I don't. Yeah.
It's
People,
just got
people
that-
from outside see it like that. I would walk through Pill any time. I mean, it doesn't bother me in the least.
Yeah,
Because I know where you go and where you don't go, I suppose.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there are places you don't go, sort of.
Probably.
Yeah.
But, you know,
And you've what was
It's a
that?
historical
Yeah.
heritage that comes with it.
it is, that's right, yeah. And it's also the sort of place where people come in, they live, they grow up and they move out of. So it's a sort of a funneling area into the rest of Newport, which is quite interesting as well.
Yeah, because as you say, you know, the dynamics of the people
Yeah,
have slightly
they
changed.
changed,
Yeah,
yeah.
They've changed. And it's an area that's almost welcoming, isn't it, for newcomers?
It's that they want to live among their own kind, which is really, really important. You know, when you come in to another country, especially if you don't know the language, you don't know the culture, you live together, right? You live in a group. And other people find that threatening,
Yeah.
don't they? Because they see a group of foreigners and they think that's threatening. But actually those people are just taking cover in themselves. But then when the children grow up and like go to schools and integrate more into the society around them, then they're more likely to move away into another part of the town and maybe another town altogether because they're comfortable in the society, whereas their parents and grandparents are not.
Yeah.
And that's where you get that sort of ghettoisation.
It's a safety hub, isn't it,
Yeah.
initially? And then when
Sure.
the confidence grows,
Yeah,
they can
it
spread
breaks
their...
out, and that happens all the time. So it's just constantly flowing through.
Yeah, it's like a churning, isn't it? of-
Mm. It's like a cauldron.
Yeah, cheers, that's good. Right, I think that's good. Is there anything else we need to add? Did you want to ask any more about...
I don't know, really. Animation-wise, I'm going for a very scribbled and sketchy style, I guess.
Yeah.
Sort of probably look a bit strange to start, but as I keep drawing in, I'll get used to the
Yeah.
shape and form.
I mean-
colour I might not. It depends where scenes need to go.
Yeah.
It's difficult because I look at one poem and I think, well, we'll work on that one. And then I look at another one and I think, equally, this could be just as inspiring.
I'll sit down and listen to the audios, and
Yeah.
from what I hear, I see what I think, and if I can imagine something to it, it'll
Yeah.
probably be that poem. It has the most vivid images I can get.
Yeah.
Because a lot of what I do and a lot of how I draw and make up ideas for animation, which is a bit different from film ideas, is that I sit there.
We just need to make sure that we can marry that up together, that,
Yeah,
you know, so we can collect footage.
yeah. So that everything's sort of on the same level.
It's got to have a good balance.
Mm.
But the majority of the film won't be animation. That's what
Yeah.
we've got to remember. You know,
So I mean,
so as long as what you do, this is why we just need to make sure that we're singing off the same song sheet, so to speak, so that we can move forward together. You know, because it's a story in itself, and that's what's so interesting about
so
it. Is
you
that
want these books back?
Nope. Those are for you.
Oh, thanks.
Well, have fun with it anyway.
Is there any Welsh connections to anything?
Yeah, obviously.
Welsh speaking in general?
Yeah, I mean, my Irish ancestors were obviously Irish speaking, but then my Welsh ancestors, whom they intermarried with, were Welsh speaking. But then by the time I came along, we were English speaking. Hence the phrase, orphan of two languages. You lost the two languages that your forebears had. So I relearned Welsh, but I don't know much Irish, to be honest.
so you're quite good at Welsh, I'm speaking.
Yeah. I mean, I learned it after I left school. I just took courses in it.
Yeah. Is it a difficult language
No,
to pick
it's
up?
not actually. It's not.
Seems so
Compared to English,
complicated.
it is a doddle. English must be a nightmare to learn.
No.
So- That's interesting.
No, Welsh is phonetic, so if you can read it.
Where are the origins then of Welsh? The word, where is it originate?
The word Welsh is an English word meaning foreigner.
No, I mean French is
The
Latin
language.
based, or
Oh,
is
like
it?
Indo-European.
yeah.
Yeah, it's the same. It's
It's a mix of like Pict language that was brought from, I guess, isolationist tribes when the Ice Age sort of ended. It's sort of a mix then of people who were here and people who were there. Then the land bridge sort of disappeared.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
they had to sort of talk to each other in a different way because they were a mix.
So it's Gaelic though, isn't it? Isn't it got
Yeah, so
Gaelic?
it's sort of
Gaelic
mix of
and-
Gaelic.
They were all originally the same language.
Because Breton, my mother's
Yeah.
Breton,
Yeah.
and she's got.
But they split
Gaelic.
into two groups, what they call P Celtic and Q Celtic. So the P Celtic is Welsh, Cornish, Manx, Breton, which are virtually identical in many ways. And then the Gaelic, the Scottish and Irish Gaelic, probably branched off earlier. So they're more difficult to understand.
Yeah. Same as
But
a
there are
lot of
similarities.
the word sort of for England comes from an area called Anguland, and they were a lot of immigrants from Anguland that came to England, and then they sort of go Anguland, England, and it sort of comes from
Yeah.
that then, especially because the English language is a mix of French.
And we've got
Welsh.
Germanic, haven't we, as well?
Yeah.
Well, it is Germanic English,
Yeah.
isn't it? It's very
Yeah.
Germanic. Whereas Welsh, the Celtic languages are more Mediterranean in many ways. They've got lots of affinities with Latin
Yeah.
and the Romance languages.
It can be easy to speak Welsh.
Yeah.
You should know.
The only problems are the mutations.
Yeah.
That's what gets
Yeah.
everyone. Can I hang on to that?
Yeah, of
won't want
course
it
you can.
right now?
So what's happening? You've had the book week. Was that very
Um,
demanding or?
World Book Day. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, don't talk to me about World
Oh.
Book Day.
Do you know that on the Wikipedia for your name on the internet, Altered States is like highlighted, and when I clicked on it, it said there's a film from 1986 called Altered States about people
Yeah.
being
yeah,
possessed.
I noticed
Is there really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's nothing to do with me.
No, I thought she made a film called Altered States.
Wikipedia is just rubbish,
Debatable.
basically. Somebody said to me one day, "How are your twins?" I said, "What twins?" Somebody had put on my Wikipedia entry that I had 2 teenage twins.
Oh gosh, did I read right then? Your sister's an illustrator.
She is.
Oh, I got that right.
That's all right. But what
Okay.
I mean is, people could go on there and put anything on there,
Yeah.
basically, can't they?
I didn't read it on
To get it
Wikipedia, by the way.
better, like a bit better. That's the thing.
And your books. I mean, gosh, you've got they're transatlantic as well, aren't they?
Yeah. My book Incarceron was a New York Times bestseller.
Yeah,
So it's like,
exactly. Is that a wonderful feeling for you?
yeah, it was good.
Oh, it's
It was
amazing.
really good,
Well,
actually.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
You know,
so they're hoping to. Oh, we're talking about film. That's been optioned for film
Yeah.
twice, and now Warner Brothers are looking at it.
Do you like the idea of it becoming a film?
I'm a bit ambivalent, to be honest, because the first option was Fox. Fox optioned it, right? So they paid me a whacking great fee, which is like hooray, fantastic. And then they commissioned these 2 guys to produce a screenplay.
So
And
you don't have anything to do
Well,
with
I didn't, and I had this conversation with these guys, this sort of three-way phone call. They're in LA, and I'm saying, look, you're
gosh.
going to do this book justice, aren't you? You're really going to stick to this book. I don't
Yeah.
want anything No, Catherine, we'll do this, we'll do that. Well, when they produced the screenplay, I mean, my agent rang me up. She said, "You are not going to like this. You were just not going to like this."
Why
she
did
she didn't want to
stray?
send it to me. I was like a travesty. It was just totally.
Why do they? This happens. The gripe is so often this, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
With writers and
Yeah.
screen.
And they had
Writers.
promised me, they said we optioned this book because we liked the book. But I don't know whether it was them or whether the studio got to them. But it was just
So what would they do? Were they trying to make it very Americanise it? with
very
all the-
Americanized, very much a romance. The sort of they lined up Taylor Lautner to star in it when he was just done his vampire thing,
Yeah.
and he was like the hottest thing on the
Yeah.
planet, basically. And they wanted
Still
a
pretty hot.
girl boy. Will they? Won't they?
Yeah.
Which is not what the book is about, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I'm like, oh God, what a cliche. And anyway, it fell by the wayside, and I was really glad because I thought that would.
20th Century Fox are
They were a nightmare.
they're a nuisance. They do change things.
So then, right, we got optioned by a group called Amber Entertainments, who are an Anglo-American group. And Irene, she's a character. She is, my God. They got this place up in Covent Garden. You wouldn't believe. Anyway, I said to her, look, they did the Golden Compass film.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. So I said, look, we've had this experience. She said, Catherine, don't worry. I got this new young screenwriter lined up. So he and I worked together on the screenplay, and it's good. I think it's really good. It matches the book completely. But then they ran out of money because they made a film of Romeo and Juliet a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
and it didn't make enough box office, so they ran out of money.
So who's got the rights for this?
Well, Ziad, the screenwriter, owns the screenplay. At the moment because they haven't paid him yet for it. If they do pay him for it, they own
Your
it.
release. Yeah.
They own it.
Oh right. Yeah.
But
It's
now-
all
now-
politics, isn't it?
Now Warner Brothers is looking at it.
The same one. The same.
Well, they asked to know if the rights were available, and we said the rights are available, and we've got a screenplay if you want to look at that as well. But they haven't got back to us yet. But it's all.
It's good for you to look for. It's nice to know that there's
Yeah.
stuff in the pipeline. You know.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you be allowed to write the screenplay?
I wouldn't want to because it's not my
Oh,
field
okay.
of expertise. I'd rather somebody wrote the screenplay and then I commented on it. And,
Yeah.
Tinkered. Yeah.
Which is what we did.
Mm.
And I think he did a really good job. But whether he'll ever get used or not,
I suppose you could commission someone to do something that if you thought
we
had
could buy it off
potential.
him. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I could buy it off him if I wanted to, which is a thought.
And then you'd get a fee, and they'd have to buy it off you. and
Yeah,
you'd make
exactly.
Money that way, really.
Do you get to see a lot of young students now, or
No, not
So-
really. I mean, I talk in schools a lot,
do you?
sort of to sort of teens, early teens mostly. But I don't actually work with them workshopping and stuff. I tend to avoid that. But I do talks to them.
Well, did you attend Cleon then?
Yeah, I went to
You
Cleon.
did, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I taught for 10 years, as a teacher in school. So, like, I don't want to go back to that. So I sort of avoid that sort of.
Good background, though, isn't it? For
It
you
is good
to,
background.
to work from,
you can,
to draw
you can
from.
command a class. Yeah.
Yeah.
You learned how to command a class as kids, which is like invaluable.
But so many of your books are so, I don't know, they're so visual. They're full of wonderful fantasy in that. I just think that there should be more films made. Because there's such rich material in there, and the way you describe things, brings a lot of stuff to life.
Yeah.
It's luck, isn't it, half the time?
It's luck, yeah. And
Yeah.
knowing people.
And
being
the
in
right time,
Yeah.
when you're ready to let
But
it.
it doesn't bother me, and I think if they want to make a film, they will. I mean, look at Lord of the Rings. He's been dead 30 years before they made
No.
And his son died just before the films came out. So a
Yeah.
year before the films came out. So it's always just his estate now.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Right, well, good luck with
Can't wait
it.
to get out of here.
No, I'm fine. I've got to go to the railway station now. So buy some rail tickets.
Do you drive or not?